Welcome to Radio Free America. This is Rusty Shackelford. Boy, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, you go away into the woods, the deep woods, the mountains of West Virginia with your family, and you unplug there for a little while, and you turn off the TV and you don't watch anything, and you kind of really start feeling good about things. You're like, you know what? These things aren't so bad. Life's pretty good. It's beautiful. Waterfalls and so forth, and hiking, and chickens. And by the way, if you have never experienced going to the bathroom in an outhouse, I highly recommend it. Anyway, so and then you come back, and here's what you get, right? So I am Rusty Shackelford. This is Radio Free America. Let's get after it. I have a proposal. I say that we do defund. We defund education. I say we defund education because that is the root of all of the nonsense in which we're now facing. It's the education system that has set up the scenario, the chessboard for what it is that we're seeing happening. Education is, I say we defund it on every level. I say we defund, or dare I say, let's keep this between us. Don't let anyone, this is between us. Maybe we deconstruct education. How about that? How about education is so poorly done that instead of defunding it, we just dismantle it. We take it all apart and we start over. How about that? I think that our education system is so broken that we need to take a real deep look, get real serious about it, start by defunding it, and then just dismantling it. And then I think we may begin to build a new system, one that makes a little bit more sense. Yes, okay. So, why do I want to defund the education system? I mean, isn't that the most important thing? Aren't teachers very important, and the education system is very important? Yes, of course, sure. In a theoretical world, that all sounds great, except for what are these kids learning? What are they being taught? The only way that we can arrive at where we're at is because, at least for the last 15 years, and it's been longer than that, right? It's a frog in the water type of scenario. Boil it slowly, but especially in the last 10. Boy, these kids are they're cooked. And they come out, and they are ready to be manipulated. Now, not all of these kids will be militant. No, they won't. They don't need to be. Only a handful of them do that can be manipulated, that really go down the rabbit hole, that really fall for all the nonsense. It's not that they all have to fall for it hook, line, and sinker to the point where they're willing to go out and destroy and blow up buildings. It's just that they have to be able to support that, right? So we have a system. And by the way, James O'Keefe, if you guys haven't seen the work that he did with Antifa, it really just shows exactly what it is I'm talking about. These kids, and they go to Ivy League schools. Have you noticed something? Isn't it interesting that all these kids that are in these protests and these march, it's all a bunch of, really what it is, it's a bunch of rich kids. It's a bunch of rich white kids is what it is. And they're all very guilty for having all this white privilege, which, of course, they never earned any of that white privilege in which they claimed to have. Their parents did. And they hate their parents for it. Which brings me to my next point. Without the education system that we currently have, we will not have been able to indoctrinate people to a point where we've gotten. The indoctrination of America started a long time ago in small little pieces. But since the federal government took over the education system, oh, by the way, thank you, George W. Bush, for No Child Left Behind. Without No Child Left Behind, education was in the state's hands. It was not a federal program. So we have George W. Bush to thank for the federalization of education. Yeah, big small government guy, right? Yeah, that's great. So now that education is a federal thing, and federal rules have been implemented. So it started with No Child Left Behind, and then Obama came in, and boy, did he do a number on it. If you have children in school, and you have for the last 10 years, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You wouldn't believe the crap that comes out of school. Actually, you would, because here's where it ends up. Here is the crap that's coming out of our school system. Children that go on to Ivy League schools like Brown University, Harvard, Princeton, believe that we shouldn't have airplanes or cars or cows or air conditioning. What is that? How mind-numbed, brainwashed do you have to believe that? To believe that the fact that you were brought up in a decent household with parents that went to work every day and cared for you and provided for you, that they were somehow bad and inherently evil, or at least inherently racist because of their skin color and because of the fact that they had a family unit and went out there and did those things for you. How warped do you have to be? Which brings me to my next point. This is the cult of liberalism. And the cult of liberalism cannot survive without the education system. It wouldn't be one. If you have seen or read anything about cults, then there's a very common theme that they all have. They all kind of follow the same exact trajectory, which makes it very fascinating if you look at it like this. I don't care if you're Charles Manson. I don't care if you're Jim Jones. It doesn't really, or the Alamos. It doesn't really matter who you are. In order to accomplish your goal, you have to indoctrinate first, second, and third. Then, out of the indoctrination process, you can sort of meet out who it is that's militant and who it is that isn't. And once you meet that out, now you have your useful idiots, right? And your non-useful idiots. Well, they're all useful idiots. Some are more useful than others. But in any cult, it is run by people who know exactly what they're doing, the deceivers, and the people who are being deceived, the deceived. And ladies and gentlemen, we are in a country right now, and we have to decide, are we going to be deceived? None of us on the other side of the equation are interested in being deceivers. And some people on the right side are deceivers too, like John Boehner. I would say he's a deceiver. I would say Lindsey Graham is a deceiver. Certainly, John McCain was a deceiver. Liars, frauds, crooks. There's plenty of them. But the question is, this isn't about ideology. This is about finding the truth. And ladies and gentlemen, I now have to go to commercial break to go ahead and, oh, by the way, our sponsors are some of the best sponsors on earth. So please frequent them. Show them you care, right? Because sponsors' lives matter.
The Trunk Monkey Theft Retrieval System. Because sometimes getting your car back is simply not enough. Another revolutionary idea you'll only find at Suburban Auto Group, pending approval by Department of Agriculture.
Welcome back to Radio Free America. This is Rusty Shackelford, getting right back after it and exposing the left for what they are, the devious, sadistic people that they are. I'm not talking about the ones that have been duped and have been fooled. I feel very badly for them. It's like people in Jonestown, the ones that run off into the jungle. After they finally realized that everything that they were told was a lie, they tried to get out. Most of them, almost none of them made it. Only a handful did. And so if you're a liberal and you're out there and you finally have realized that everything that you have been taught is a lie, it's starting to add up and you're like, wait, hold on a second, something doesn't feel right. If your gut is telling you that something's wrong, it's okay. That's a good thing. Okay, you can leave the cult. You can come over to the other side. I'm not saying the other side of what they're telling you. I'm saying just to the truth. Okay? And you're not going to be excoriated for it. You're not going to be browbeaten for it. You're not going to be told that you're less of a black man or less of a Puerto Rican or less of a gay guy or less of a transgender. You're not going to be told any of that. You're just going to be accepted for who you are, which is an American. So here is the next point. If you have been following Antifa and Black Lives Matter, this is a very... If you read, if you've read any of my articles, and you know that I believe they're a terrorist organization, and to that point, I'm going to tell you after studying it what I believe, how I believe that they structured this organization. They have two wings to what it is that they're doing, and it's really it's been proven effective at least 2 times that I'm aware of. The most recent one is between Hezbollah and the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. The PLO was the political wing of Hezbollah. So the PLO would go out and they would lobby for Palestinian rights from the Israeli state. They would claim injustices. The Israelis are doing this, that, and the other thing. And I'm not really trying to get into what exactly it is that they were trying to say how they were being wrong. That's not the point. The point is that they were the political wing. The military wing is Hezbollah. So they claim separation, even though they're exactly the same. There is no difference between Hezbollah and the PLO. Doesn't exist. Except for on paper, and anyone that has half a brain can see it. Bill Clinton had no problem whatsoever dealing with Yasser Arafat. We made deals with a terror organization because it wasn't Hezbollah, it was the PLO. Well, the PLO learned that, and Hezbollah learned that from the IRA and Sinn Féin, another terrorist organization that was around before they were. And how that works, it's exactly the same thing. You have a political wing that cleans their hands. They have nothing to do with the violence. Now, but they understand the violence. They understand it. They don't endorse it necessarily, but they understand it. Well, the IRA did the exact same thing. Sinn Féin did the same exact thing with the IRA. You would have a protest. You'd have a bunch of people show up, right? And as soon as it turned dark, all of a sudden things started blowing up. Police stations started getting bombed. The masks went on. And the very next day, they'd go back to work, and no one knew who was who or what was what. PLO, same thing as Hezbollah. You didn't know who these people were. They moved in and out of each other seamlessly. And so they learned it. I think that they learned it. I can't prove that, but this is just from paying attention to this stuff over the course of a lifetime, that they must have learned that from the IRA and Sinn Féin, the political wing of the IRA. Well, what's happening now is really no different whatsoever. Black Lives Matter is nothing more than the political wing of Antifa. They're the ones that can go out there and incite violence without inciting violence, can support and show. Now, Antifa goes out and they do all the ugly work, right? They're the ones that'll blow things up. They're the ones that'll loot. Well, it's a mishmash. Like Bill Barr himself said, this is a witch's brew of basically terror-type organizations that are taking advantage of the situation that was set up. And so they go in and they loot and they rob, and some of them are just opportunists. I mean, well, probably most of them, to be quite honest. The people that are blowing these things up aren't necessarily the ones that are walking away with the Nikes, right? They have 2 different objectives. But it suits a lot of different types of objectives, doesn't it? Right? So let's defund the police. Let's get rid of the police. Who does that work for? Well, any criminal, obviously. Any militant, any left-wing militant, that works for them. And again, back to the whole cult of things. How messed up in your head do you have to think that you can get rid of cops? Like, this is a radical, stupid idea. The only way that you can think it's even remotely a decent idea is if you have been brainwashed, if you've taken the Kool-Aid. This is the dangerous scenario we find ourselves in. We now have major corporations. I turned on my damn DirecTV or my Amazon and they told me that they support Black Lives Matter. Okay, well, that's like saying that you support Hezbollah. I'm sorry, the PLO, or you support Sinn Féin. Why do I have to? Why, by turning on the television, why does I have to have a political statement? Why can't I just turn on my TV without having a political statement? Why can't I watch the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball or anything else for that matter without having to have a political statement? Because these people are pushing their indoctrination out to the next level. And what happens in a cult? In a cult, if you tell anyone within the cult, if you act outside of their ideas at all, whatsoever, anything outside of it, you have to be destroyed. You are the enemy. The enemy has now been set up. So now anyone who is outside of Black Lives Matter / Antifa is the enemy. Wow. That pretty much makes 90+% of America. Yeah, it could be a little bit dangerous. Old Rusty Shackelford here, Rusty Shackelford program. Time for a commercial break. We hope you'll continue to join us. Peace.
This flat tire needs a man, but when there's no man around, when there's no man around, Goodyear should be. Why? Watch this. New Goodyear Double Eagle carries its own spare inside. Lifeguard safety spare. A tire in a tire. Keeps on going. Next time, give her a second chance.
Rusty Shackelford back here, Radio Free America. Has anyone seen this? Have you seen the speech that Michelle Obama gave, this graduation speech? Very, very interesting. And she said something that I found. Well, let me ask you this question. Would you ever tell your kid, your teenage kid, that don't ever let anyone tell you that you can't be angry, that you can't be angry enough? It's okay to be angry. You should be angry. Could you imagine telling your 17, your 18, your 19-year-old kid that? Why would you be doing that? What would be the point of doing that? I think we know, or at least I think I know what the answer to that is. Is that not inciting? Somehow inciting, inflaming a scenario? Aren't we supposed to be bringing the country together? Well, how can you bring a country together if you're angry? And how can you bring a country together if someone's not allowed to tell you that you can't be angry enough? That sounds like a recipe for violence, quite frankly. I remember a time not that long ago where Sarah Palin got in trouble because she had a target on an ad. This is when she was running for governor of Alaska. And she had a target of the district, not a person's head, it was a district up there. And they went after her saying that she was inciting violence and, she was inviting right-wing extremists to come out and snipe her opponent. All this crazy nonsense. And, of course, the left-wing media ran with it. And Sarah Palin is inciting violence. Do you remember when the congressman, the baseball game between the Democrats and the Republicans about 3 years ago when they shot Scalia? I mean, not Scalia. What the hell is his name? The guy out of Louisiana, and a couple other people, and the cops. The cops were there. Thank God the cops were there to be able to take this guy out. And this guy was a left-wing kook. So these people are driven to violence. They really are. They're being driven to violence. They're being driven to do all of these things. They're being manipulated. And this is ask Charlie Manson the power of being able to convince people to do crazy things that they otherwise wouldn't normally do. And this is why I come back to the cult of all of this, because over a long enough period of time, if you convince people that the only point of their life that is meaningless if they don't fulfill this prophecy, In this particular case, the prophecy is saving the world from global warming. It's saving the world from racist white America. It's saving the world from the imperialism of 500 years ago and righting wrongs and all of this rot gut that, of course, never can. You want to talk about the invisible enemy. The invisible enemy is the cult of liberalism. And it's here, and it's ever present, and we're being duped by it every day, and more people are waking up to it. I think, unless of course you want to go ahead and kiss the boots or get down on your knees every time that you see an African American and apologize. And I'll guarantee you, if you do that, 9 out of 10 African Americans, I don't care where you are in this country, are going to look at you like, "What the hell is wrong with you? Get off! What are you doing?" By the way. That whole thing, I have to say, I kind of feel bad for Nancy Pelosi's husband, because if you saw what happened yesterday when she got down on her knees with all the other Democrats in Congress for the 8 minutes and 36 seconds or whatever it was, you could tell that she doesn't get down on her knees very often, and she needed some help up. So I feel bad for Mr. Pelosi. That poor SOB, he may have had a rough going of it for the last 30, 40 years or so. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. Last thing I want to say is what happened to the coronavirus? Boy, that just kind of went away, didn't it? The coronavirus now is no longer an issue. We have the Centers of Disease Control coming out and saying, you probably should social distance. You probably should wear a mask, but protesting this is more important than the spread of COVID-19. What? That's how you know this whole thing was a joke and a lie. That's how you know. Because right off the bat, this is the first thing they say, "Oh, you can go out now." But it gets better, because the WHO, the World Health Organization, they come out and they say 3 things. The first, they started off with, they say that the coronavirus, first they told us it stays on surfaces. So wash your hands. You have to wash your hands. And then they told us that even asymptomatic people, you probably have it. You don't even know it. So you can't leave your house. You might kill your grandfather, your grandmother. What kind of a horrible human being would you be? Well, here's what we find out. At least this is what they tell us. Now, don't get me wrong. Whether they were lying the first time or lying the second time, it doesn't really matter. But here's what they're now saying. It doesn't stay on surfaces. Not for very long. It dies almost immediately. Asymptomatic people rarely pass it on. It's nearly impossible for someone who has it but is not showing symptoms to pass it on. And the last thing is the cherry on top. This is the one. It spreads mostly in the home. Let me tell you what that really means, folks. What that really means is the WHO is now giving the green light for Black Lives Matter and Antifa to go out and cause more destruction. Don't worry about the coronavirus. It's not an issue. It's not going to. The worst thing you could do now is stay at home. How many people had to die to figure this one out? How many lives had to be ruined to figure this one out? 30, 40 million people out of work to figure this one out. They literally just came out this morning and said it mostly spreads in the home, and asymptomatic people rarely pass it. Excuse me? You destroyed an entire economy on this premise, and it was a lie. We know it's a lie. And now we have all of this. Now we have the mass looting throughout this country. We have businesses on fire that were already closed for 2 months that will never come back. And we're supposed to defund the police and take it seriously. And here's the problem, folks. Some people are taking it seriously. We're in trouble if we don't pay attention to this. This is not going to get better but just by putting our heads under the covers. So I say defund education. That is the root of this. The root of this is the crap that's going into these kids' heads. They believe it. They believe it. Rusty Shackelford, Radio Free America. Can't wait to talk to you again. Later.